This video has to do with the test class that will create objects related to the subclass and the superclass that we've discussed in the previous videos. In your textbook, the test class is on page 415. I've just opened another version of the textbook on the left-hand side so that we can easily refer to the code that we already discussed. So in the test class, we have the normal main method, and then the statement 3 and 4, we create a circle object. It's formulated in the way that you can see there. The name of the subclass is provided, then the name of your object equals, then you have the new keyword, which indicates that you're going to call a constructor from your subclass. In the subclass, if you can recall, we have 3 constructors. So the one that will be called with the statement 1 parameter, because you are providing one argument in your call statement, which means it will call statement 8 and 9. It will call in your subclass, it will call the second constructor because it matches the parameter that is coded in this specific constructor. So the one that you put as argument in the call statement will be transferred requires a value as a parameter, one value as a parameter. So this constructor will be called and executed. Also, automatically, you don't see it, but it will automatically call the constructor of the superclass. Why? Because in statement 2 of this subclass, you are inheriting the superclass. So you don't see it here, but it will automatically, before it does, it will jump to the superclass and execute the default constructor of the superclass. In other words, the constructor without parameters. It does that by default, automatically. So once that is done, everything is set up and you have a complete set of code which includes the superclass code as well as the subclass code. From here in your test class, you can now call any one of the public methods for the subclass. So statement 5 in your test class says display the string a circle and then call from the circle object that you created just now dot the toString method. Now you will recall that your subclass, the circle subclass, doesn't contain a toString method, but the superclass does. So here's an example of a superclass method that is called object, the circle object. So you call, if you can just quickly go to the left-hand side, this is the toString method that will be called. It starts with created on, and then the date, new line, color is a part of a string, then it displays the color, and then and filled, and then either is it filled or not with that specific color. So this string will be displayed when you call your toString method. Since you value for the filled data fields, the superclass, the information, the default information for those 2 instance fields will be displayed. If we just scroll up on page 1241, you'll see here the code for the superclass was for the color. White was assigned to color by default, and the filled data field, if you do not supply any information by default, the filled Boolean value will be false. That's the default value for a Boolean data field. So, method, it will have the color of white displayed there and false displayed if the toString method is called. Now, let's just quickly go down here. You can see there a circle. That is what is displayed there, a circle. And then from your superclass created on the date that it was created in this format. Then a new line, color, colon. You see the new line color, colon. Then the actual color, which we just saw now is white, and filled. Also, the default value, since we haven't assigned anything yet to filled, it will be false. So the toString method will display a circle string plus, because it's part of it, and then the toString method will then display the rest of the output, as you can see in the output area on this page. Next line is the statement 6. The color is, you can see here it's displayed, the color is, then from circle.getColor. Again, it's a method from the superclass. GetColor, remember the default color is white, so is white. Then statement 7, the radius is from the subclass, and it will display 1.0 because the argument that we transferred to our circle object was 1. So it will display the value of 1 for the radius. Statement 8, again a method from your subclass will be displayed. Statement 9 as well, and in get. Statement 11 and 12 follows the same procedure. In this case, you are just creating a rectangle object. So the structure is you indicate the name of the subclass, then a name for your object equals new. Then you call the constructor, which is the same name as your class, the constructor. But remember, again, you have a few in the, let's just scroll down here, in the rectangle subclass. Again, you have the default one and then one with different number of parameters. So in this case, the constructor that you are calling must be the one with 2 parameters because you supply 2 arguments here. So 2 will now be transferred to the width of the rectangle, and the value of 4 will be transferred to the height of the rectangle. So you have a rectangle object now with a width of, again, the toString method will be called from the superclass because, as we said before, the very first thing that is done by this constructor will be to call the constructor of the superclass, even though the code is not stated here. That is what happens by default. And then it assigns the parameter values to the data fields locally. Call the toString method from your superclass. And then again, statement 14, you call a method from your subclass, rectangle subclass. And there in statement 16 as well. So this is an explanation of, or an example of how the test class create objects of the subclass and then communicate via statement call methods in the subclass.